In September 2015, a United Nations team published and adopted the agenda of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. This is a universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that all people enjoy peace and prosperity by 2030. BC's First Call Child and Youth Advocacy Coalition states, "Poverty is the most important social determinant of health. Long-term studies show that even access to the universal medical care cannot overcome the likelihood that growing up poor will lead to lifelong, persistent health issues." October 30th, 2017, the Minister of Social Development joined the United Nations British Columbia to discuss the details of an advisory forum on poverty reduction. The legislation introduced required the government to release its full poverty reduction strategy by March 31st, 2019. The BC government promised to reduce the child poverty rate by 50% and the overall poverty rate by 25% in the next 5 years. BC was the only province in Canada without a plan. As we see here, this is a map of the poverty reduction strategy in Canada. Green indicates provinces and territories where strategies are in place. Red indicates strategies that were released but failed to be implemented, resulting in expiration. And orange indicates British Columbia pending. Why was BC the last of the provinces and territories to develop a poverty reduction plan? The BC government stubbornly refused to develop a plan and instead pointed to its jobs plan. They believed jobs were the answer to solving poverty, even though a large share of those falling below the poverty line were full-time minimum wage workers. The depth of poverty in BC has increased over the last 10 years due to the increase of core essentials of food and rent. 557,000 people live in poverty in 557,000 people live in poverty in BC. 99,000 of BC's poor are children in low-income families, which is above the national average. Children who live in a single-parent families are 3 times more likely to live in poverty than children in 2-parent families. 64,000 seniors are living in poverty in BC, which is the highest poverty rate in Canada. 40% of those living in poverty are low-income, full-time working adults. Child costs in BC have increased by 35% since 2007. Housing prices and rent in BC are the highest in Canada, along with the lowest rental vacancy rate, causing an increase in homelessness. Basic utility costs have increased by $419 per year since 2011. Food costs are high, and a family of 4 requires $12,000 a year to purchase nutritious food. An individual working full-time for a full year at a minimum wage would still, after tax, fall below the poverty line. November 2019, the Poverty Reduction Strategy Act, which embedded the poverty reduction targets and timelines in law, was passed unanimously. In March 2019, Together BC, British Columbia's first poverty reduction strategy, set a path to reduce poverty by 25% and child poverty by 50%. The BC government has already implemented minor changes, such as a 75% wage increase, eliminated student loan interest and MSP premiums, payment increase of $179 a month to family-based caregivers looking after children. Families with children will receive $1,600 to $3,400 per year, depending on the number of children. These strategies are a tremendous improvement by the government from the previous decade. However, what happens to the other 75% still living in poverty? Are they disposable? We can't just focus on 25%. We need to focus on 100%. It's hard to imagine that these small changes, like a 75-cent hourly increase, can bring both children and adults out of poverty. I feel these strategies are somewhat short-sighted, and this plan is set to fail as the cost of living increases.